If you've been stuck in the same rank for a long period of time, it's probably not because you're missing some secret mechanic or hidden trick. It's because of how you're using your time. Most players don't get stuck in elo hell because of just getting unlucky. They get stuck because they're maximizing their playtime instead of optimizing it. I'll be breaking down why most players never get past platinum, and more importantly, how a simple shift from maximizing playtime to optimizing improvement completely changes your rank trajectory. This isn't about playing more ranked, grinding aim trainers for hours, or copying pro settings. It's about understanding how skills actually develop in competitive games and aligning your habits with that reality. For context, I'm currently top 200 in the finals, and I've helped my team reach second place across all USA colleges in Valorant. I've also won as a solo queue against full-time pro players and leaderboard stacks more than 600 times across 5 FPS titles. What I'm about to share isn't just theory, it's the system that I personally use to hit the leaderboards in any FPS game that I play. Here's the core issue. Most players queue game after game hoping that volume alone will translate into improvement. And to some extent, it does, at least early on. That's why most people climb out of lower ranks relatively quickly. But once you hit around platinum, the returns from raw playtime start to flatten, and without intentional adjustment, you plateau. Think about it like this: if you spend 3 hours playing ranked on autopilot, repeating the same habits, making the same decisions, and reacting the same way to every situation, you're not really practicing, you're just reinforcing. You're hard coding your current level of play deeper into your system. So instead of getting better, you get more consistent at being stuck. If you want to stop this habit that's limiting your progress, you need to start getting more value from each play session. Optimizing your playtime means you're still playing the game, but you're actively extracting value from it. You're identifying weaknesses, testing adjustments, and refining your understanding of situations. Even if you play fewer total games, each one contributes more to your improvement. That's the shift that breaks plateaus. A useful way to understand this is by comparing video games to movies. When you watch a movie, the experience is static. No matter how many times you watch it, the outcome doesn't change and your role in the experience is passive. You're just consuming content. A lot of players treat competitive games the same way. They log in, queue up, and go through the motions. The game happens, but they're not actively shaping their own skill development within it. But competitive games are fundamentally different from movies because they're dynamic and skill-based. Your decisions, your awareness, and your execution directly influence the outcome. That means every match is an opportunity to evolve your skill set, but only if you approach it intentionally. Otherwise, you're just watching a slightly interactive movie where the script repeats itself with minor variations. This is why you'll see players with over 1,000 hours who have never made it past gold. At that point, it's not a time investment issue, it's either a priority issue or an approach issue. In other words, either they genuinely don't care about improving in ranked, which is completely fine and valid, or they're stuck in a loop where their time is no longer translating into progress. If you fall into that second category, then the solution isn't to play more, it's to allocate a portion of your time specifically towards improvement. Now, this doesn't mean turning the game into a job or grinding endlessly. It just means being deliberate for even a small percentage of your sessions. If you're already going to spend hundreds or maybe even thousands of hours in a game you enjoy, redirecting even 10 to 20% of that time towards focused improvement has a disproportionate impact. A lot of players misjudge how improvement actually works. They think improvement requires massive effort or strict routine, so they default to doing nothing different. In reality, small and consistent adjustments outperform occasional intense effort every single time. For example, instead of playing 10 games mindlessly, you play 8 normally and dedicate 2 to focusing on a specific weakness. Maybe it's your positioning, maybe it's how you take fights, maybe it's how you interpret enemy rotations. Just doing that alone starts to shift your baseline over time. Let's bring in little Timmy in chat to illustrate this. Little Timmy plays 5 hours a night, queues non-stop, and focuses almost entirely on outcomes. If he wins, the session was good. If he loses, it was bad. His decisions are driven by emotion in the moment, and once the game ends, he moves on without reflection. Over time, his mechanics might improve slightly, but his understanding of the game barely evolves. Chad, on the other hand, might play the same amount, or even less. He still enjoys the game, still plays ranked, but he approaches it differently. He instead allocates some of his attention to improvement. So when something goes wrong in his game, he identifies why. When something works, he questions whether it was actually correct or just lucky. He's not turning every match into a lecture, but he's consistently nudging his understanding forward. After just a few weeks, the difference between Timmy and Chad becomes noticeable. After a few months, it becomes massive. Timmy feels like he's grinding with no results, while Chad is steadily climbing, even if the pace isn't dramatic day to day. That's the compounding effect of optimizing your playtime. Another important layer here is understanding why improvement matters in the first place. At the end of the day, video games are just pixels on a screen. They don't carry real-world stakes in most cases, and they're primarily a form of entertainment. But even within that context, I find that winning tends to be more enjoyable than losing. Performing well feels better than underperforming. I don't think that's a controversial take. It's just how most people experience competitive environments. So if you're already investing time into these games, improving your ability to win enhances the quality of that time. It doesn't take away from the fun, it usually amplifies it. The key is keeping that balance where improvement supports enjoyment instead of replacing it. My goal isn't to overwhelm you with complex theory or niche scenarios. It's to break down concepts that show up across every competitive FPS and simplify them into actionable steps. Things like how you approach engagements, how you interpret information, how you position relative to your team. These are universal skills you can apply no matter what your main game is. And the reason I emphasize that is because you don't need to overhaul your entire playstyle to see results. Implementing even one or two high-impact concepts can significantly shift your performance. I'm not saying that lightly either. I've personally used almost every principle I've recommended in my videos, and they're consistently translated across multiple games at a high level. That's how I've been able to reach leaderboards in multiple FPS titles, not by reinventing the wheel each time, but by applying refined fundamentals. The mistake most Platinum players make is thinking the gap between them and higher ranks is massive or complicated. In reality, it's just a collection of small inefficiencies that stack up. Slightly worse positioning, slightly slower recognition of patterns, slightly less disciplined decision making. None of these are impossible to fix, but they also don't fix themselves through volume alone. This is why the optimized versus maximized distinction matters so much. Maximizing is comfortable because it doesn't require change. You just keep playing and hope things improve. Optimizing requires just a bit more awareness, but it gives you control over your progress. You're no longer waiting to get better, you're actively engineering it. If you watched this far into the video, please consider subscribing. Currently, 95% of my viewers don't bother subbing to the channel, and every sub really means a lot for a channel of my size. Thanks a lot for considering. Most players never get past Platinum because they treat improvement as a byproduct instead of a goal. They maximize time, minimize reflection, and end up reinforcing the exact habits that keep them stuck. The players who break through aren't necessarily more talented or more dedicated in terms of hours, they're just more intentional with the time they're already spending. If you start approaching your games, or any other goal in life really, with even a small degree of optimization, you'll notice the difference. Situations will make more sense, decisions will feel more deliberate, and your consistency will improve. And over time, that's what moves you out of plat. Not a sudden breakthrough, but a series of small, correct adjustments that compound into a higher level of play. I'll put in a few clips of my own games in top 200 lobbies. You can use this as an example to see where my opportunities for improvement lie. Enjoy.